Well, it's been a little bit since we've went north of the border, so we figured now is just as good of a time as any to go back up into the Great White North. And this episode, we are talking about not only another Canadian horror movie, but a new movie as well, which is, well, I was going to say something that we haven't done for a while, but we did a new movie not too long ago, I think. I can't remember what it was, but...
The Meg.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it's like, so like 2 episodes ago.
Yeah, we're sorry, folks. I know when Shanon said that we would be doing a Canadian film, I know everybody was probably like, oh, wow, they're finally going to do Hello, Mary Lou. But no, we are not doing Hello, Mary Lou, so I apologize up front for that. That will come in time, though.
Yeah, this episode we are talking about a movie that has been getting a lot of a buzz, it seems, over this summer. And we're talking about 2018's Summer of '84.
I want to just start out by saying, and I guess we shouldn't say whether we liked it or we didn't like it, right? Thumbs up, thumbs down. I'll save that to the end. Never mind. I was going to give my opinion right away off the bat. But I guess I'll start out by saying, first of all, when this first came out, I was excited because, I like these nostalgia films. I like the films that kind of bring you back to the time when you were a kid, and like we talked about in the past, like the Stranger Things, Goonies, and Monster Squad, and all those sort of like kids on an adventure, like mixed in with some sort of horror element or whatever. And clearly, this is one that kind of goes right along with it. Oh, and just like It as well. That was another big draw for me, was the last year's It, because of they decided to go with the 80s theme, very much like Stranger Things. So I've been kind of following this film ever since I heard of it, and that was before I think it was released. But then when it was released, I had kind of started to hear some negative reviews, and it just didn't seem. I watched the trailer, and the trailer really didn't do it for me, and I was kind of like, oh, it's probably going to be just an okay film, or I may not really care for it that much, and so I didn't really get excited about it. And then I finally, a couple of weeks ago, sat down and watched it.
Yeah, I had not seen any trailers or anything for it. Really had no interest to watch it until you had said that you were watching it, and I was like, oh, cool. Maybe I'll check it out. Actually kind of started looking into it a little bit. And I don't know if this is actually 100% true or not, but I kind of think that this movie and some of the buzz of this movie and stuff might be going a little bit off of the success that horror had last year, with getting a couple of movies nominated for various Oscars and that kind of stuff. Because this movie, from what I understand, made its debut at Sundance earlier this year, which is, that's kind of cool to get a horror movie at not just any film festival, but like the film festival outside of Cannes, I think. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty cool.
It definitely has kind of made a buzz in the independent film world, and people have been talking about it, and I want to just say that as soon as I started watching it, I connected really quickly with it. I really, the story of this in this film really kind of captured me, and I wasn't expecting that. And I guess going into a film with low expectations is always good, because then you end up I guess you're not too overexcited about it. So like this one, I kind of went in saying, well, probably it's probably forgettable. I'm not going to be that too into it, but yeah, that changed quickly.
I thought maybe you were going to say, because this reminded you of when you were a kid and you were spying on your next door neighbor who was a cat killer or something.
Yeah, I mean it. We used to spy on the neighbors, so I can kind of relate, I guess. I remember one time a buddy of mine and I were over, and this when we were pretty little, and we went over to the neighbor's house, and we had a mask, and it was nighttime, and like my buddy stuck his like kind of looked in the window, and the woman saw him, sitting there with the mask on, and then he ran real quick. And we were like hiding on the side of the house, and she like they had this big black dog, and she like held the dog out the door, and the dog was like barking. It was like a way to scare us, I guess. And then like as we were like hiding up against the side of the house. So that, I mean, that kind of stuff happened all the time. Neighborhood stuff. Like you would just run around the whole neighborhood and, run through people's yards. And I don't know if you did that, but I know I did that a lot.
Not really like spying on people, but yeah, me and one of our mutual friends when we were kids, we lived exactly one block apart. I think I might have told this story on here before. So, I lived on one street. He lived on a block, whatever it was, west of me. His address was like the opposite of mine. And to get to each other's houses, what we would do is we would cut through the lawns of the two houses that were between us to get to each other's house, rather than, like walk around the whole block. You just right through the yards of the people and be there like in a minute and a half. Which always drives me nuts when kids do that to my yard now.
You see that happening?
No, it doesn't happen so much anymore. When we first moved in, it happened every once in a while, and I turned out to be that, old grumpy guy. You kids, get off my lawn! It's kind of funny because, like, when people would yell at you when you were a kid, and you would get all kind of, like, oh, whatever, screw off, old man. But now, when you're actually a homeowner and, like, some strange kid is in your yard, you're like, get the hell out of here, dude. I don't want you getting hurt on my property.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess that was one thing, too. Like, back then, we were all over the place in terms of, like, yards. And I remember on my block, there was one house that was actually like a house turned into an apartment. And they had a mulberry tree in the backyard, and we were always underneath that grabbing mulberries and running through people's backyards. And I mean, it was just like, basically just, there was no like real boundaries in terms of property. You just kind of ran wherever you wanted to go. Didn't really think about it.
Yeah, I mean, that was, what, 30 some years ago?
Yep. A long time ago, I guess, right?
I mean, it was a different time back then, so you can't really do that nowadays.
Yeah, now kids are running through yards on their video games.
If they're even running through yards.
Well, in their virtual video game worlds.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, all the kids are stuck in their rooms, playing games and not able to step out and do these kind of crazy things that we did.
To get back to the topic of this week's episode, Summer of '84. So if you haven't heard of this movie, because it is brand new, I mean, it just came out, well, I mean, technically less than a month ago, really. I think it was officially released on August 10th. And then I think it was one of these movies, which this seems to be the trend with some of these low-budget movies now, is like it goes into theaters and then sometimes it goes like on demand right away, and then there's even a few times where it'd be like on demand like September 1st and then small theater run on September 14th, which is kind of weird. But anyway, so this just came out. I think its official release date was August 10th. So at the recording of this episode, it's been just shy of a month. So we won't give too much away about it. We'll keep this episode pretty spoiler-free. But the premise of it is pretty simple and pretty straightforward. So basically what it is this little... I shouldn't say little. They don't really give any indication on how big the town is. But it's this town, and there is a serial killer on the loose, preying on kids. And I think, if I remember correctly, too, it was like primarily boys that were going missing.
Yeah, it was.
And The main character in The Boy, this Davy kid, he suspects one of his neighbors might be responsible for the murders, and so him and his friends kind of band together and kind of do some little small-time, homegrown investigational work, and essentially are spying on their neighbor to see if he's truly the murderer or not. And so that's pretty much the premise of the movie. Pretty straightforward. You had said when you first turned this, and this is exactly what had happened, because I think you were either watching it or you had just finished watching it when you texted me. You're like, "Oh man, Summer of '84, it's great.
Yep.
We're going to do that next episode." And I was like, "Okay, cool. I haven't watched it yet, so I'll have to check it out." And then I think it was later that night, or maybe it was the next night, hunted it down, found it, and started watching it. So even though we were saying before we'll do the, thumbs up, thumbs down at the end of the episode, it might be blatantly obvious as we talk through this what our opinions are of the movie. But when the movie first started, the very first thing that I noticed with it was, or at least personally, was like, oh man, this is like, the start of it was very similar to the start of The Babysitter, which was a Netflix movie from earlier this year or last year. I was like, oh, okay, cool. This would be cool because I love that movie. This would be great. And so then it kind of started and stuff. And then it turns out that the kid who played the main character in The Babysitter is like a co-star in this movie. So then when he popped up, I was like, oh, it's totally going to be kind of like The Babysitter. But I never really connected with the movie the way that you did, unfortunately. And I don't know why I didn't, but I didn't. It was just one of those things where, like, as it was going through, I mean, there was actually more than once where I was kind of like, this is kind of boring.
Really?
And I think it was mainly due to the fact that, because I didn't ever watch the trailer for it, and this movie has been marketed as a horror movie, and then even the promotional, like the poster artwork for it and stuff, is like this milk container with like a skull on it, and then there's like, like surrounded in blood and stuff, and you're like, oh cool, it's gonna be gory, and there's like zero blood in it. And like, ugh.
Well,
it's like,
I don't know.
Like no, I don't mean zero blood, but you know what I mean. I mean, it's not a gore fest, and it wasn't scary at all.
It's nothing like The Babysitter, for sure.
Oh no, not at all.
The Babysitter is more of like I think The Babysitter is a good comparison because I think those are two very similar but different movies. It's kind of a neighborhood-centric film, about kids and that kind of thing, where The Babysitter is kind of like your full-blown gore fest, kind of like leaning on the comedy angle. This movie is more of The Babysitter would be more of like a horror comedy. This would be a horror thriller. So, and very much focused on the thriller aspect of it, because it's kind of like you don't know who the killer is, and it's the kids trying to figure out who the killer is, and it's a little bit more of a serious tone film where it's, obviously there's the antics of the kids and, them looking at like Playboy magazines and all of that. But at the same time, there is that serious tone of who really is the killer. And the focus is, basically there's this cop in the neighborhood, and like you said, there's these murders going on. These boys are being killed, and like the focus become like this kid, the main character, thinks that this cop has something to do with it because he had gone into this guy's basement earlier in the day after he delivered. He's a newspaper delivery boy, and he went to pick up a check from this guy, and like he had to help him move a table into the basement, and he saw something that kind of concerned him, and since then he kind of had this like thing in his mind, like there's something with this guy. So it is kind of like more of a whodunit suspense horror film that kind of has a slow burn to it, where you're waiting to see things happen, as opposed to like The Babysitter, where pretty quickly that this is just going to be a fun gore fest.
The feel that I got from watching this movie is somebody probably was watching The Babysitter and was like, oh, that was kind of a cool movie. Let's make a movie like that, sort of. But let's mix it with give it some more flair. So let's take The Burbs and let's mix that in with The Babysitter. And then let's take Monster Squad and then let's put that in with The Babysitter. And then we're going to mix that all up and we're going to make this horror movie, but we're going to pluck out all the fun parts of these other movies. And then that's going to be our movie. The one guy, the cop, he actually looked sort of like the guy from The Burbs.
Right.
But yeah, that's what this movie unfortunately was just like a combination of like some really great movies minus the greatness. I don't know what it was, but to me it was just like boring.
See, for me it was like I really kind of connected with the characters. I liked the main kid. I thought he was good. I also liked the whole like the girl that was in that and how there's this, the main female role in this film is this girl who basically like a few years older than the main character, and she was his babysitter at one time, and her parents, I believe, are divorcing or something's happening with them, and so they're going to be moving out of the town, so she's kind of going through this sort of trip down memory lane kind of thing where she's like remembering all her times in the town, and she knows she's going to be leaving soon, so she reconnects with the main character, and it's kind of weird. She almost plays it like she's got some sort of love interest in him, but like it never goes there. But it they kind of teeter on that. It's like right on the line of that. I thought she was a pretty I liked her character. I liked the kids overall. But what I really liked was the suspense of the film, and like not knowing who the killer was, and like as they kind of figure that out, and like the story unravels it, and like through what the kids find and how they figure things out. I thought it was really well done, and it also another film that it reminded me of was Silver Bullet, the werewolf movie, because it's like that you're trying to figure out who the werewolf is. And it kind of had that vibe to it as well. Is it a great, incredible movie? Is it like the best movie of the year? Probably not, but it's very, very much highly enjoyable film. That's why I'm kind of surprised you didn't like it.
I was expecting to like it. Even in the first few minutes, I was like, oh, cool. All right, it's going to be kind of like The Babysitter. And then, because it even has that kind of, which it's kind of weird that this is becoming a thing, but I truly think it is a thing. But when it started, it had that, this is a Netflix movie kind of look to it. Like not necessarily just only Netflix, but, like, oh, hey, this is a Hulu thing, or this is a, Amazon Prime production. It had that kind of slightly above independent, like low budget, me and my buddies made this movie in our backyard feel to it, but below the whole, like, what people truly call like independent movies, like the big budget independent movies and stuff. Yeah. Like The Babysitter and like kind of like Stranger Things and stuff, to where it kind of had that like, low budget feel to it, but you knew it was like, from a big studio kind of a thing to it.
Right.
With it. Maybe if I would have read it a little bit more into it before I watched it, it would have been a different story. But, I was expecting a horror movie is what I was expecting, and it wasn't really a horror movie in the sense of what I was expecting anyway. So, and like I said, too, with having that sort of like The Babysitter feel at the beginning of it, I guess I was expecting a little bit more comic relief during the film. And so,
Gotcha.
Really the two things with that is when you're expecting a scary movie and kind of a horror comedy, and it turns out to be neither of those, it can be a little bit of a disappointment, I guess. But at the same time, even though, once I finally come to grasp that while I was watching the movie, I'm like, oh, this isn't what I was expecting. But it's reminded me of these other movies that are great. I could never get over it, and then even when I was done watching it, I mean, unless I had to, I probably would never go back and rewatch it.
Yeah, that's weird that you say that because I watched it twice, and I liked it both times. I just really enjoyed it. So to me, it's one of the, like those surprising, enjoyable films that like I was focused on or knew much about until I'm going to have to go ahead and say I'm going to give it a thumbs up. I really, really liked it.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, I'm going to go with a thumbs down on it, unfortunately.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it's not going to be like our last two movies where, our last movie in particular, we ragged on the movie the entire episode, and then we're like, we give it a thumbs up.
Right.
But yeah, unfortunately, I mean, I think if you do your research on it beforehand and kind of know what you're getting into, or even, after listening to this and, like, that doesn't sound too bad, then maybe give it a view. But like I said, for me personally, it just ended up not being what I was expecting or not hoping for anyway. With that in mind, it was a letdown for me.
There you have it, 50-50, right?